You ever notice how some of the big life goals we grew up chasing still hang around, even when they've got no business tagging along after 70? It's like keeping a treadmill in the living room. You don't use it, it collects dust, but you feel guilty getting rid of it. Well, living alone changes the rules of the game. You don't need to impress anyone, keep up with some imaginary scoreboard, or run yourself ragged chasing goals that stopped making sense years ago. Today, we're having a real talk about 10 of those so-called life goals you can toss out without an ounce of guilt. And trust me, once you hear them, you'll wonder why you didn't ditch them sooner. Number 1. Becoming financially set for life. For most of our working years, set for life was the holy grail. You scrimp, you save, you make sacrifices, all for that day when you can finally breathe easy, knowing the bills are paid forever. But here's the sneaky truth nobody tells you. That feeling of being fully secure never actually arrives. Something will always make you wonder if you have enough. Inflation, medical costs, a market dip, a family member in trouble. There's always a curveball. I knew a retired machinist named George who kept working odd jobs well into his mid-70s. He had more than enough to live comfortably, but he was chasing that extra buffer, just in case. Then, at 78, a health scare forced him to slow down. He told me later, "I missed 5 years of the best fishing weather of my life because I thought I needed another 50 grand in the bank. And you know what? I didn't." When you're living alone, the real question isn't, "Am I set for life?" It's, "Do I have enough to live well right now?" Because time is the one account you can't top up later. Sometimes, the smarter investment is in your current happiness, that trip you've always wanted, that cozy chair you'll actually sit in every day, instead of stockpiling for a someday that may never come. 2. Climbing the social status ladder. It's funny how this one sticks with us long after it stops making sense. In your younger years, climbing the social ladder might have meant better clothes, a fancier car, a bigger house in a nicer neighborhood. It's the game we were all taught to play, whether we wanted to or not. But after 70, especially if you're living alone, that ladder often leads to nothing. Nobody's handing out trophies for the size of your dining room table anymore. I remember a woman from my old walking group, Janet, who spent years maintaining a big, expensive home just to keep up with the kind of people she used to socialize with. She'd complain about the yard work, the taxes, the constant upkeep. But she was afraid that downsizing to something simpler would make her look like she'd fallen socially. One day, she finally sold the place, moved into a small, sunny apartment near the library, and confessed to me, "I thought I'd feel embarrassed. Instead, I feel 10 years younger, and I don't miss pretending I enjoy $100 dinners." Living alone teaches you something freeing. Your worth isn't tied to how others rank you on some invisible social scorecard. In fact, the more you stop worrying about what ladder rung you're on, the more you realize the only people worth keeping in your life are the ones who don't care about rungs either. 3. Leaving behind a huge inheritance. This one gets tricky because wanting to take care of the people you love is natural. But I've lost count of the number of seniors who drain their own quality of life just so they can leave a bigger number in the bank when they're gone. Some even take it as a personal mission. I'm going to make sure my kids and grandkids never have to struggle. The problem is, sometimes that gift doesn't land the way you hope. I met a retired postman named Frank in a community center class. He'd been living so frugally, eating canned soup, skipping vacations, never fixing his leaky bathroom, all so he could leave each of his 3 kids a hefty sum. After he passed, his daughter admitted they appreciated the money, but within a year, it was gone. A new car, home renovations, a few big trips, and then it was back to normal life. Frank's sacrifices had bought them a few short-term pleasures, while he'd spent his last years in a house he didn't even enjoy. I've also seen the flip side. Big inheritances sparking family disputes, jealousy, and even estrangement. And that's the heartbreak no parent or grandparent wants to see. It's not that you shouldn't leave anything, it's that the size of your gift shouldn't come at the cost of your own comfort, joy, or peace of mind. Sometimes the most valuable inheritance you can leave is experiences while you're alive, trips together, shared projects, or simply being present. Those memories won't be spent away. 4. Achieving the dream home. The dream home is one of those goals that hangs around for decades. Maybe it's something you pictured in your 40s, a big wraparound porch, a fireplace in the master bedroom, a kitchen so fancy you could host a cooking show. And sure, it's nice to have dreams, but past 70, especially living alone, this one can be more trouble than it's worth. I knew a gentleman named Harold who finally bought his dream home at 72 after years of saving. He wanted space for family gatherings, room for his woodworking, and a huge yard for the grandkids. The first year was exciting. New furniture, housewarming parties, the whole 9 yards. But by the second year, he was spending more time fixing leaky gutters and mowing lawns than actually enjoying the place. The dream started to feel more like a part-time job with bills attached. What nobody tells you when you're younger is that a dream home is a living, breathing thing. It needs attention, repairs, and money constantly. And if you're living alone, those responsibilities don't get split in half. They're all on you. Harold ended up selling and moving into a smaller place with a balcony that overlooked a park. He said, "Turns out my dream wasn't a house at all. It was a life where I could wake up without a to-do list taped to my forehead." The real luxury after 70 isn't square footage or granite countertops. It's having a home that serves you, not the other way around. 5. Building a new business empire. There's something about retirement that sparks big entrepreneurial dreams. Maybe it's the free time, maybe it's wanting to leave a legacy, or maybe it's the nagging voice that says, "You still have one more big project in you." I've seen people jump into starting coffee shops, boutique stores, consulting firms, sometimes with great results, but often with a mountain of stress they didn't bargain for. A woman named Doris I met through a community writing group opened a little bakery at 69. She thought it would be a fun way to meet people and share her love of baking. Within months, it turned into 4 a.m. wake-ups, supply headaches, payroll issues, and weekends spent dealing with equipment breakdowns instead of grandkids. After 2 years, she shut it down and admitted, "I wanted a passion project. What I built was a second career I didn't need." It's not that starting something new is bad, far from it. But trying to build an empire at this stage, especially alone, can be a slippery slope. The time and energy it demands can swallow the very freedom you worked so hard to get. Smaller, contained projects, ones you can step away from anytime without losing sleep or thousands of dollars, often fit this chapter of life better. A business can be fun, but an empire? That's a young person's marathon, not a solo sprint in your 70s. 6. Finding a forever partner at all costs. Companionship is beautiful, and love stories later in life can be some of the richest and most rewarding. But I've also seen what happens when someone treats finding a forever partner like an urgent mission rather than a natural possibility. The pressure to not die alone can cloud judgment faster than you'd think. There's a man I know, Arthur, who jumped back into dating after his wife passed. Within a year, he was engaged to a woman he'd only known for a few months. He ignored the small warning signs, controlling behavior, financial dependency, because he was so focused on starting the rest of his life with someone. 6 months after the wedding, they were divorced, and he was left not only heartbroken, but financially drained. His words stuck with me. "I was so afraid of being lonely that I invited the wrong person into my loneliness." Living alone after 70 doesn't have to mean living without love. But it's worth remembering that not all companionship has to be romantic or permanent. Some people find deep satisfaction in close friendships, community activities, even pets that greet them at the door. The right partner can be a gift, but the wrong one can turn your golden years into a storm you didn't need to weather. The real goal isn't to fill a space next to you, It's to make sure your own life feels whole, with or without someone in it. 7. Getting back to your younger self. This one sneaks in through the back door. You wake up one day, look in the mirror and think, I want to get back to the old me. Maybe it's about weight, stamina, appearance, or the way you used to live when you were busier, more energetic, and felt like you could take on the world. The trouble is, chasing your younger self can turn into a constant, quiet disappointment, because that person lived in a completely different time, with a completely different body and a completely different set of responsibilities. I knew a retired teacher, Evelyn, who decided at 74 she was going to get back to her 40-year-old self. She joined 3 different fitness classes, started a strict diet, dyed her hair, and filled her calendar until it looked like her working years again. But a few months in, she was exhausted, frustrated that her body didn't respond like it used to, and feeling like she was failing at something that shouldn't even have been the goal in the first place. Eventually, she told me, I realized I wasn't chasing my younger self. I was running away from who I am now. The truth is, your current self is not a downgrade. It's the upgrade. You've got wisdom, resilience, and hopefully more freedom than you've ever had. The goal isn't to rewind the tape. It's to make this chapter so rich and satisfying that you don't feel the need to go back. 8. Becoming worldly traveled. Travel is wonderful, and if it's your passion, it can absolutely enrich your life. But making it a must-do life goal to see every country, city, or landmark you've ever dreamed of can turn into a tiring, expensive race that overshadows the joy of actually experiencing the places you do visit. I met a couple in their early 70s, Martha and Jim, on a group tour of Italy. They'd just come off a trip to Japan, and after Italy, they were headed to South Africa. They were lovely, but they admitted they were exhausted. Living out of suitcases, dealing with long flights, constantly adjusting to new time zones. Jim chuckled and said, I think we're just trying to prove to ourselves we can still do it. By the end of the Italy trip, they decided to start exploring their own state instead. Small towns, local festivals, places they'd driven past for years without stopping. Martha told me later, we found just as much magic an hour from home as we did halfway across the world, without the jet lag. Worldly travel can be a joy, but it's not a requirement for a life well lived. Sometimes slowing down and going deeper in fewer places, even the ones close by, leaves you with richer memories than a whirlwind passport full of stamps. 9. Winning over estranged relationships. This one's heavy, because it usually comes from a place of love, guilt, or unfinished business. You think, before I go, I need to make things right. And sometimes reconciliation is possible. But sometimes, no matter how many letters you write, calls you make, or olive branches you extend, the other person just isn't willing. That's when this life goal starts to become a slow drain on your emotional well-being. There was a man in a grief support group I attended briefly who had been writing to his estranged daughter for 15 years. She never once replied. Every holiday he would send a card, every birthday a small gift. He told us, I thought if I just kept showing her I cared, she'd come back. But after years of silence, he came to a heartbreaking realization. He was pouring love into a closed door. Eventually, he stopped writing. It wasn't about giving up. It was about letting go of the constant ache and redirecting that love toward the relationships he did have. Not every story has a movie ending, and that's okay. You can still find peace without the reunion you hoped for. Sometimes, the goal isn't to win them back. It's to forgive yourself, wish them well, and live fully with the connections that are in your life. 10. Proving you're still relevant. This is one I see so often in online communities for older adults. The need to show that you're still sharp, useful, and in the loop can be incredibly strong, especially if you've lived a life where your identity was tied to your work, your parenting, or your role in the community. You might sign up for every volunteer opportunity, overcommit to committees, or try to keep up with every new trend, from slang to smartphones, just so nobody can say you're slowing down. My neighbor Carol is the perfect example. She's 76, smart as a whip, and incredibly capable. But she was running herself ragged, leading 3 church committees, mentoring young teachers, attending every community event, and keeping up with all the latest gadgets. She admitted she was terrified of being left behind or forgotten. Eventually, her health forced her to step back, and she discovered something surprising. The people who valued her didn't need her to prove anything. They just liked being around her for her. Relevance isn't something you earn by constantly performing. It's something that naturally shines through when you're engaged with life in ways that make you feel alive. You don't have to be everywhere, do everything, or know every cultural reference to matter. You already matter. The trick is believing it. So here's the truth, my friend. Letting go of old life goals isn't about quitting. It's about choosing. Choosing peace over pressure. Choosing joy over just in case. Choosing the kind of life that actually feels good to wake up to. Because at this stage, the smartest thing you can do with your time is fill it with things that make your days lighter, not heavier. If any of these hit home for you, maybe this is your little nudge to finally cross them off your list. And hey, if you enjoyed this chat, stick around. Hit that subscribe button, give the video a like, and let's keep swapping the kind of stories and advice that make these years the best ones yet.